When I was 15, my mother boarded a flight to Rome without me after canceling my ticket at 2:18 p.m., reporting my passport lost at 2:41, and watching my brother remove it from my bag at exactly 14:39 on airport security footage, and she thought I would stay quiet. But what she did not know was that the trust my father built in 2017 had an interference clause that would freeze $420,000 and turn one airport gate into a court file with my name on it. And my name is Eliza Whitaker. Chapter 1. The day my mother boarded without me. The board above Gate 7B already said closed when I stepped out of the restroom, still drying my hands on the back pockets of my jeans. For a second, I thought I had read it wrong. Flight AZ611 to Rome. Closed. The letters felt unreal, like they belonged to some other family's itinerary. People were thinning out in the terminal, rolling their carry-ons toward coffee shops or the next gate. My mother and my brother were nowhere in sight. I scanned the rows of seats where we had been sitting 20 minutes earlier. My backpack was gone. The paper cup my mom had been holding was gone. Even the magazine Nathan had tossed aside was gone. They must be in line, I told myself. They must be at the counter asking about seats. Maybe they were upgrading. Maybe they were grabbing food. I walked up to the counter, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, I think my family is on this flight. I just stepped away for a minute." The gate agent, a woman with silver glasses and a tight bun, tapped her keyboard. "Can I see your boarding pass?" I handed her my phone. She frowned. "This ticket has been canceled." Canceled? 42 minutes ago, it was modified online. That did not make sense. My mother had been sitting right next to me 45 minutes ago, scrolling through her email, complaining about how expensive airport sandwiches were. "There has to be a mistake," I said. "My mom is Caroline Whitaker. My brother, Nathan Whitaker. They are on that flight." The agent typed their names. "They boarded," she said. "The flight door closed about 5 minutes ago." I felt something cold move through my chest. They boarded? Without me? I reached for my backpack, then remembered it was not on my shoulder. I looked down at my purse. I opened it with hands that were suddenly clumsy. My passport was not there. I felt my stomach drop. I checked again, slower this time. Lip balm, my phone charger, a crumpled receipt from a gas station in Louisiana, and at the bottom, tucked into the small inner pocket, an old passport. The navy cover was scratched and faded. I flipped it open. Expired. Last year. This was the one from our trip to Canada in 2018. My current passport had been in a large manila envelope inside my backpack. My mother had insisted on keeping all of our travel documents together. She said it was safer that way. Now my backpack was gone. I looked back at the gate agent. "I think my passport was taken," I said. "I think my ticket was canceled without me knowing." Her expression shifted. "Stay right here." Within minutes, a uniformed Port Authority police officer approached. He was calm, not dramatic, but the air around me felt different now. Serious. "What is going on, miss?" he asked. "My family boarded that flight," I said. "My ticket was canceled and my passport is missing. I did not cancel it." He asked for my name. Eliza Monroe Whitaker, 15 years old, from Plano, Texas. He led me to a seating area near the side of the terminal and asked me to walk him through everything from the moment we arrived at JFK. We had flown in from Dallas that morning. The trip to Rome was supposed to be about healing. My dad had died the year before, a heart attack at 47 that none of us were prepared for. My mom said we needed a reset. Europe, art, history, something to make us feel like a family again. I told the officer I went to the restroom before boarding. I told him my mom and Nathan were sitting together when I left. He radioed something I could not hear clearly. Another officer joined us. They spoke quietly. Then one of them said, "We need to check the system." The gate agent confirmed again that my ticket had been canceled online. The change request came from an email address registered to Caroline Whitaker. The timestamp was 42 minutes before departure. 42 minutes. That was when I was sitting right next to her. "Did you authorize anyone to change your ticket?" the officer asked. No. Do you know who has access to your passport? My mother kept it in my backpack. We were traveling together. He looked at the old passport in my hand. And this? This is old. My current passport was in a manila envelope inside my backpack. He nodded and stepped aside to make another call. I sat there staring at the floor tiles. It felt impossible that this was happening by accident. You don't accidentally cancel one child's ticket and board an international flight without noticing she's missing. You don't accidentally take her passport and leave the expired one in her purse. The officer returned and asked if I would be willing to review security footage. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear him. They led me into a small office with a monitor on the wall. The timestamp in the corner read 14.36. There I was, standing up from the seats near Gate 7B and walking toward the restroom. The camera shifted to a wider angle. At 14:38, Nathan leaned over my backpack. He unzipped the front pocket. He looked around once. My mom was standing 3 feet away, looking at her phone. At 14:39, he pulled out the manila envelope. At 14:40, he slipped something into his own carry-on. At 14:41, he zipped my bag back up. My mom glanced up. She saw him. She did not react. The video continued. Boarding began. People lined up. At 15:02, my mom and Nathan walked down the jet bridge. She did not look behind her. I watched it twice. The second time, I didn't blink. The officer asked quietly, "Do you want to file an official report?" "Yes," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady. He began writing. He explained that they would open an incident report through Port Authority. Because my passport had been reported lost 2 days earlier, the Department of State would also be notified. That caught my attention. Reported lost. I did not report it lost. He showed me the record, an online submission from our home IP address in Plano, Texas, 2 days before the trip. I felt something shift inside me. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision at the gate. This had been planned. And then the memory came back. 3 weeks earlier, I'd walked past Nathan's room and heard him on the phone. "If she's not eligible, it all consolidates," he said. I assumed he was talking about football scholarships. He was a senior, a quarterback with a verbal commitment to a Division I program in Oklahoma. His whole life was about eligibility. I thought it had nothing to do with me. The officer asked if there were any financial disputes in the family. I hesitated. My dad had created something called the Whitaker Irrevocable Protection Trust in 2017. He was a numbers guy, always thinking ahead. $300,000 from life insurance and investment accounts. The trust documents said Nathan and I would each receive equal distributions when we turned 25. If one beneficiary was removed, the trustee was required to notify the probate court in Collin County. Removed. The word felt heavy. I remembered 2016 when I told my mom Nathan had taken cash from her purse. She called me overly dramatic. I remembered 2017 when he was caught cheating on a math test. She said boys crack under pressure. I remembered 2018, a week before my dad died, when he sat on the edge of my bed and said, "You are not invisible, Eliza. Don't let anyone make you believe that." Sitting in that office at JFK, watching my brother take my passport while my mom stood a few feet away, I realized this was not about Rome. It wasn't about healing. It was about removing me from the equation. The officer finished the report and slid a copy across the table. "If you sign here, this becomes an official complaint. There will be follow-up. It will involve your family." I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. "I want to file it," I said. Outside the office, planes were still taking off. People were still boarding flights to places they had planned for months. My mother and my brother were somewhere over the Atlantic, but for the first time since I stepped out of that restroom, I did not feel lost. The system was moving now, and I had chosen not to stay silent. Chapter 2. This is not a family argument. A female officer brought me a bottle of water and sat across from me, while another officer stepped out to make more calls. They treated me carefully, not like I had done something wrong, but like something serious had happened and they needed to get it right. The gate agent came in a few minutes later with a printed record of the ticket modification. She placed it on the table in front of us. "This is the change request," she said. "It was submitted through the airline website at 2:18 p.m. Eastern Time. The account holder is Caroline Whitaker." I stared at my mother's name in black ink. The request removed my seat assignment and refunded the fare to the original form of payment. "Did she say anything at the gate?" I asked. The agent shook her head. "She and your son boarded together. There was no indication that another passenger was missing." The officer looked at me. "Did your mother tell the airline you would travel separately?" "No." "We checked that too," the agent said. "There was no unaccompanied minor service purchased. In the system, you were listed as not traveling." Not traveling? Like I had decided not to show up. The officer wrote that down. He explained in a steady tone that the airline had followed protocol. If a ticket is canceled and a passenger does not present at the gate, the system treats it as a no-show. Without a passport in hand, I could not have boarded anyway. The problem was not at the counter. The problem had started long before we reached Gate 7B. Another officer entered with a tablet. "We have confirmation from the Department of State," he said. "Your valid passport was reported lost 2 days ago through the online portal. The report was submitted from an IP address registered to your home in Plano, Texas." 2 days ago, we were still packing. My mom had been folding clothes on the bed, reminding me not to forget adapters for Italy. Nathan had been complaining about missing summer workouts with his team. "I never reported it lost," I said. "We know," the officer replied. "That is why this is no longer a misunderstanding." He did not say fraud out loud, but I heard it in the silence between us. They asked for the name of the trust again. "Whitaker Irrevocable Protection Trust," I told them. "It was filed in Collin County in 2017. My father set it up. He had been a CPA, methodical and cautious. He believed in backup plans." One of the officers excused himself to consult with a supervisor. When he returned, he told me they would forward the incident report to the appropriate authorities in Texas because there could be an element of attempted financial interference if the passport cancellation was linked to altering beneficiary status. The words sounded technical, distant. Attempted financial interference. They did not say brother. They did not say mother. I asked if I could see the video again. The room felt colder this time. The footage rolled from the beginning. I watched myself stand up and walk away. I watched Nathan unzip my bag. I watched him slide the manila envelope into his carry-on as casually as if he were borrowing a pen. I watched my mother look up. She saw him. She did not stop him. She did not call my name when boarding began. She did not walk back down the jet bridge when I did not appear. I did not cry. The tears had been replaced by something else, something sharper. The officer paused the footage at 14:39, right as Nathan's hand closed over the envelope. The timestamp matched the online report that declared my passport lost. "That is enough to establish probable cause for document theft," he said. "And because you are a minor, child endangerment will also be reviewed." The words were heavy, but clean. There was no drama in his voice, just procedure. They asked if I wanted to notify a relative. I gave them my grandmother's number. Margaret Ellis lived 30 minutes from us in Plano. She answered on the second ring. "Grandma," I said, "I'm at JFK. They left me." She did not gasp. She did not ask if I was exaggerating. She said, "Put the officer on the phone." While she spoke calmly about next steps, I realized something important. This was not the first time she had sensed tension in our family. She did not sound shocked. She sounded prepared. When the call ended, the officer told me that because my passport had been fraudulently reported lost, a formal inquiry would be opened. The Department of State would flag the document. The U.S. consulate in Rome would be notified since the individuals involved were now on Italian soil. He explained it without urgency. Not cinematic, not dramatic, just a series of emails and secure communications being sent across departments. "We are not arresting anyone tonight," he said, "but the report will follow them." I asked if they would be stopped at the airport in Rome. "That depends on the Italian authorities and the consular staff," he said. "Our job here is to document what happened and secure your safety." Secure my safety? The phrase made something click. They had not just left me behind, they had stripped me of identification and removed my legal ability to travel. In another country, that would have been catastrophic. A female officer returned with printed copies of the initial report. She asked me to review the timeline. Ticket canceled at 2:18 p.m., passport reported lost at 2:41 p.m., boarding began at 2:55 p.m., departure at 3:07 p.m. Every number aligned. As we went through the paperwork, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was Brittany Keller, Nathan's girlfriend. "Are you okay?" she wrote. "How do you know?" I replied. "He told me you were freaking out and not coming, but that did not sound right." I hesitated, then typed back, "Did he mention anything about the trust?" There was a pause before her response. "He said, once you are not eligible, it all consolidates. I did not understand what he meant." The word again. Eligible. I showed the message to the officer. He asked if she would be willing to provide a statement. I told him she probably would. "This is not a family argument," he said quietly. "This is intent." Intent. That was the difference between a mistake and a plan. Hours passed. The terminal lights dimmed as evening settled over JFK. My grandmother called back with the name of a family attorney in Plano. The officers noted it in the file. Before midnight, we received confirmation that U.S. Consulate Rome had been informed through official channels. Italian airport police would make contact once the flight landed. No sirens, no cinematic takedown, just procedure. I pictured my mother stepping into the arrivals hall in Rome, expecting cobblestone streets and hotel transfers. I imagined her phone lighting up with missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. I wondered if she would finally understand that this had gone beyond something she could dismiss as sibling drama. The officers arranged for me to stay in a secure airport assistance suite overnight, while travel arrangements were made for my return to Texas. They treated me with a kind of steady respect that felt unfamiliar. Around 1 a.m, the officer who had taken my statement came back into the room. "The flight has landed," he said. "Italian authorities have made contact. Your mother and brother have been informed that a report has been filed in the United States regarding document fraud and possible financial interference." I nodded. There was no triumph in the moment, no sense of victory, just a quiet realization that the story my family had always told about me, that I was dramatic, that I overreacted, that I misunderstood things, was no longer the only narrative on record. Now, there was paperwork, and paperwork does not disappear. Chapter 3. When they landed in Rome. By the time dawn broke over New York, the consequences had already crossed an ocean. I did not see what happened at Fiumicino Airport in Rome, but I heard about it in careful, measured updates from the officer assigned to my case, and later from the consular official who agreed to let me listen in on a monitored call. Italian airport police approached my mother and Nathan just after passport control. They were not handcuffed, they were not surrounded. 2 officers stepped forward, showed identification, and asked them to come to a private office. When my mother's phone lit up with a call from an unknown U.S. government number, she answered. I was sitting in a quiet office at JFK when the consular officer in Rome connected the line. "This is Consular Officer Martin Hale from the United States Consulate in Rome," he said. Mrs. Whitaker, you have been identified in connection with an active report filed in New York involving your minor daughter, Eliza Whitaker. There was a pause. I could almost picture my mother's face tightening. This must be a misunderstanding, she said. Eliza decided not to travel. No, Officer Hale replied evenly. Evidence indicates that her ticket was canceled without her authorization and that her passport was reported lost prior to departure. I heard Nathan in the background. Mom, what is going on? The Italian officer spoke next, his accent careful but clear. We need clarification regarding document fraud and potential child endangerment. You will remain here until this is reviewed. I felt my pulse steady instead of spike. This was no longer a private argument in our kitchen in Plano. It was an official matter in 2 countries. Later that morning, Port Authority confirmed they had forwarded digital evidence to Rome. The first layer had been the footage from JFK. The second came from email records. A forensic review of my mother's email account revealed a message sent 3 days before our flight to our family attorney in McKinney, Texas. The subject line read, "Beneficiary Status Clarification." The body of the email asked whether a beneficiary who was absent or unreachable for an extended period of time could affect the timing or distribution of a trust. Extended period of time. We had not even left the country yet. When the consular officer read that aloud during the call, my mother tried to explain. I was asking hypothetically, she said. After my husband died, I wanted to understand the terms better. You initiated the inquiry 2 days before reporting your daughter's passport lost, Officer Hale responded. That timing is relevant. There was another silence, longer this time. Then came the third layer. The trust was managed by a financial services firm in Dallas. They had already been alerted by the Port Authority report because the trust documents were referenced in my statement. Within hours, the firm provided a copy of an email they had received from an account registered under my name. The email requested information about early distribution for tuition expenses and included what appeared to be my digital signature. I never wrote that email. The timestamp placed it the night before our flight. The IP address matched our home internet in Plano. When the Italian officer asked Nathan about it, his voice rose. I was just asking questions, he said. That is not illegal. Using your sister's identity to request financial distribution is serious, Officer Hale said calmly. It was not like that, Nathan insisted. I just needed to know how it worked. I pictured him running a hand through his hair, the way he did when coaches questioned him on the field, frustrated that anyone would challenge him. What exactly were you trying to understand? The Italian officer asked. That if she was not eligible, it would consolidate, he snapped. I have a scholarship on the line. I cannot afford delays. There it was. Not just money, status, identity. The future he believed was owed to him. My mother's voice came back on the line. Nathan, stop talking. Officer Hale did not raise his voice. Mr. Whitaker, please clarify what you mean by not eligible. He hesitated. If she did not meet the conditions, the distribution could shift. The distribution was not scheduled until both beneficiaries reach age 25, Officer Hale said. That is standard in the trust document. Nathan said nothing. Back in New York, one of the officers explained something to me that I had not fully understood before. The trust contained an interference clause. If any beneficiary attempted to remove, disqualify, or financially pressure the other, the trustee was obligated to notify the probate court immediately and freeze discretionary actions. Within hours of the email surfacing, the financial firm contacted the Collin County Probate Court. A notice of potential interference was filed. The trust automatically shifted into independent oversight. No family member could request changes. No distribution discussions would move forward without court approval. My father had written that clause in 2017, a year before he died. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table while he explained that a trust was not about control, it was about protection. At the time, I assumed he meant protecting both of us equally. I had not considered the possibility he anticipated imbalance. The three-way call continued. "Eliza is listening," Officer Hale informed my mother. Her breathing changed. "Eliza," she said, her voice softer now, "why did you not stay at the gate?" I stared at the wall in front of me. "Why did you not turn around?" I asked. The line went quiet. "I thought you would figure it out," she finally said. "You have always been independent." Independent. That was the word she used when she didn't want to defend me. Independent meant I didn't need backup. Independent meant if something went wrong, it wouldn't break me. "You saw him take my passport," I said. "I didn't know that's what he was doing," she replied. "You saw him take the envelope." She did not answer directly. Nathan's voice cut in again, impatient. "Mom, this is insane. We're in Rome. We did nothing." The Italian officer spoke firmly. "The matter is not concluded. There will be documentation and cooperation with United States authorities." No one was arrested, no dramatic scene unfolded in the arrivals hall, but statements were taken, copies of passports were examined, notes were entered into official logs in 2 countries. The golden mask did not fall with the crash. It slipped. When the call ended, Officer Hale told me the authorities in Rome would allow my mother and Nathan to proceed to their hotel, but the case file would be transmitted to Texas for civil and potential criminal review. They will need to address this upon return. The trust has already been flagged. I sat there, absorbing the fact that my father's careful planning had done what he intended. It had created a paper trail that could not be rewritten by charm or denial. Later that afternoon, my grandmother called again. "The attorney in McKinney confirmed receipt of the probate notification," she said. "The court will schedule a review. They can't access the trust now, not without scrutiny." "Good," I said quietly. "Do you want them arrested?" she asked. I thought about that. "I do not want revenge," I said. "I want the truth documented." That night, while my mother and brother were likely unpacking in a hotel room in Rome, I sat in a temporary airport suite in New York with copies of official reports in a manila folder. I was not invisible on those pages. My name appeared in full. My statement was recorded. The timestamps were precise. Nathan had always been the one people rallied around, the athlete, the one with the future everyone talked about. Now his words were preserved in transcripts. If she is not eligible, it all consolidates. The conflict was no longer a whispered tension in our house in Plano. It was a matter for Collin County Probate Court and potentially for a district attorney to review. Italian authorities closed their portion of the inquiry without detention, but they forwarded cooperation notes to the United States. By the time my mother's plane would bring her back to Texas, the file would already be waiting, and this time it would not be dismissed as sibling drama. Chapter 4. Karma has paperwork. What followed was not loud, it was not cinematic, it did not come with flashing lights or dramatic speeches. It came in certified mail envelopes, scheduled court dates, and calendar reminders that no one in our house could ignore. Nathan's juvenile hearing was set 3 weeks after he returned from Rome. Because he had been 17 at the time of the incident in June 2019, the case was reviewed through the juvenile court system in Collin County, Texas. That technical detail mattered. It meant the proceedings would be quieter, more controlled, and sealed from public access. It did not mean they were meaningless. I sat in the courtroom beside my grandmother, Margaret Ellis. She wore a navy suit and held her purse in her lap like she was bracing herself for impact. Our attorney sat to her right with a stack of documents tabbed and organized. On the other side of the aisle, my mother sat with Nathan. He wore a plain button-down shirt instead of his usual athletic gear. Without the jersey and the crowd, he looked younger. The prosecutor outlined the facts without emotion. Ticket cancellation at 2:18 p.m. Passport reported lost at 2:41 p.m. Video evidence timestamped at 14:39 showing removal of travel documents. Email correspondence sent under my name requesting early distribution from the Whitaker Irrevocable Protection Trust. Nathan admitted he had accessed my bag. He admitted he sent the email to the trust management firm in Dallas. He insisted he did not understand the legal implications. I was asking questions, he said. You impersonated your sister, the judge replied calmly, and you initiated a false federal report regarding a passport. That is not a question. There was no shouting, no gavel slammed in anger. The judge's voice was measured, controlled, final. Nathan was placed on 18 months of probation. He was ordered to complete ethics counseling and community service. His conduct record would remain documented within the juvenile system and accessible in compliance reviews for collegiate programs. My mother did not cry in the courtroom. She sat very still, hands folded tightly, eyes fixed ahead. For the first time in my life, she did not attempt to defend him. Outside the courthouse, the air felt heavy and hot. Nathan avoided looking at me as we walked to the parking lot. You could have stopped this, he muttered under his breath. I did not cancel my own ticket, I said quietly. He shook his head like I was the unreasonable one. Within days, the Division I football program in Oklahoma initiated a compliance review. The school had offered Nathan a verbal commitment earlier that year. Verbal commitments are not binding contracts, but they are contingent upon conduct and character standards. The court documentation was enough to trigger a review under their code of conduct policy. Nathan received the call in the living room. I heard only his side of it. It was a misunderstanding, he said. There were no charges filed as a felony. A pause. I understand. He hung up without slamming the phone, which somehow felt worse. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the university. The offer was withdrawn, pending further evaluation. The letter cited conduct concerns inconsistent with program standards. There was no press coverage, no headlines, just a quiet unraveling. At home, the atmosphere shifted. The future everyone had talked about for years, the scholarships and draft prospects and big stadiums, dissolved into something uncertain and small. Meanwhile, the Collin County Probate Court issued its order regarding the trust. The Whitaker Irrevocable Protection Trust, established by my father in 2017, was placed under independent court-supervised trusteeship until both beneficiaries reached age 25. All discretionary authority previously held by the financial services firm in Dallas was suspended. Any request for information or distribution required court approval. The interference clause had been triggered exactly as my father had written it. The attorney explained it to us at my grandmother's dining table a week later. This clause exists to prevent coercion between beneficiaries, he said. Once interference is established, the trust locks down. Nathan shifted in his chair. I did not coerce anyone. You attempted to remove your sister's eligibility, the attorney replied evenly. That qualifies. My mother tried to soften the moment. We are still a family. We can move past this. I looked at her steadily. We are a family with a court order. Silence settled over the table. My grandmother's house felt older than usual that afternoon, the ticking clock on the wall louder than anyone's breathing. The legal consequences did not end with Nathan. The hospital where my mother worked launched an internal review after the juvenile court record referenced her email inquiry about beneficiary status and the online passport report originating from our home. As a nurse manager, she was held to ethical standards that extended beyond patient care. The administration concluded that while she had not been criminally charged, her involvement raised concerns about professional judgment. By early 2020, she was removed from her management role and reassigned to a night shift staff position. Her salary adjusted accordingly. There was no public announcement, but at home, the shift was obvious. She left for work at 10 p.m. and returned after sunrise. One evening, as she was tying her hair back before leaving, she paused in the hallway. "I never wanted this for him," she said quietly. "You wanted Rome, without me." She flinched slightly, but did not argue. Nathan attended court-mandated counseling twice a week. The counselor's office was in a strip mall near the highway. I drove past it once and saw him sitting in the waiting room staring at the floor. He cornered me in the kitchen later that week. "You think you are better than me now," he said. "No, I just refuse to disappear." He looked away first. The strangest part was that I did not feel victorious. I did not feel vindicated in some triumphant way. What I felt was quiet. The constant undercurrent of doubt that had followed me for years had been replaced by documentation, video timestamps, email headers, court orders, compliance letters. I was not dramatic. I was not overly sensitive. The record showed that. A month after the court hearing, my grandmother asked me to come over alone. She had something in her hand when I arrived, a cream-colored envelope sealed with clear tape. "This your father gave me in 2017, she said. "He told me to keep it safe." I sat at her kitchen table and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a certified copy of the original trust document. The signature at the bottom was my father's, bold and steady. In the letter, he wrote about balance, about fairness, about protecting both of his children, even if one of them someday tried to tilt the scales. He wrote that love does not mean blindness, it means structure. I read the last line twice. "You are not invisible, Eliza, and you are not required to shrink to keep peace." I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. The trust documents were stamped with the seal of Collin County, dated 2017, unaltered. Everything my father had prepared for was now active. Back at home that night, the house was quiet. Nathan was in his room, my mother was already gone for her shift. The probation schedule was still pinned to the refrigerator. The letter from the university lay unopened on the counter. I stood in the kitchen and listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. There was no celebration, no sense of revenge fulfilled. There was only stillness. The truth had been processed, stamped, and filed. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel like the smallest person in the room. Chapter 5. The part he never counted on. Time did not erase what happened in 2019. It layered over it. The court dates ended, the probation schedule came down from the refrigerator, the letters from lawyers were filed into a gray metal box in my grandmother's hallway closet. But what changed most was not the paperwork, it was the way I moved through rooms. From 2020 through 2022, my mother and I sat in therapy twice a month. Dr. Larkin's office overlooked a parking lot in Plano. Nothing picturesque, nothing dramatic. Folding chairs, a muted rug, a small ticking clock. At first, my mother tried to explain the past as a lapse in judgment. "I thought I was protecting him," she said during one early session. "And who was protecting me?" I asked. She did not answer right away. There were long stretches of silence in that room, the kind that made truth harder to dodge. "I did not think you would fall apart," she said finally. "I did not fall apart," I replied. "I filed a report." Dr. Larkin leaned forward slightly. "Filing the report was not aggression," she said. "It was a boundary." That word stayed with me. Boundary. We drafted them carefully. With the help of our attorney, we created written agreements. My mother would not contact the trust management firm. She would not inquire about distribution schedules. She would not act financially on my behalf without explicit written consent. It felt unnatural to require documentation between mother and daughter, but it felt honest. She signed every page. Nathan completed his 18 months of probation in late 2020. He finished the required ethics counseling and community service hours without complaint, though he rarely spoke about it. The Division I scholarship did not return. The calls from recruiters stopped. By 2023, he was taking general education classes at Collin College. By 2025, he was working as a technician at an auto repair garage in Fort Worth. It was not glamorous. It was not the stadium life people once predicted, but it was steady. He was not ruined. He was recalibrated. We learned how to exist in the same room again, not as rivals, not as victims, just as adults who share history. In 2026, during a quiet lunch at a diner off Highway 75, he looked at me across a chipped laminate table. "I thought I deserved more," he admitted. "More than what?" I asked. He hesitated. "More than equal." That honesty did more than any court order. Meanwhile, my own life grew in ways that had nothing to do with him. After high school, I moved to Austin and studied sustainable design. I interned with a small firm that specialized in reclaimed materials. I learned how to read contracts, how to negotiate pricing, how to build something that would outlast a trend. The trust remained under independent oversight until I turned 25. The statements arrived annually. I read every line. I understood where the money was invested. I asked questions, not to manipulate the outcome, but to educate myself. In the spring of 2029, the letter arrived from the independent trustee confirming that I had reached the age threshold. The final valuation stood at $420,000. I sat on the floor of my apartment in Austin with the letter spread out in front of me. I thought about the 15-year-old girl standing in Terminal 4 at JFK, holding an expired passport and realizing she had been written out of the itinerary. That girl felt small. The woman holding that letter did not. I withdrew $210,000 to establish Ellery Whitaker Design, LLC. I filed the formation documents with the Texas Secretary of State. I opened a business bank account. I hired a CPA. I signed a lease for a modest studio space near East Austin. Every step was deliberate. The business focused on sustainable interiors, reclaimed oak flooring, low-impact lighting systems, furniture crafted by local artisans. It was not flashy, but it was principled. Clients came slowly at first, then more steadily. By early 2030, a boutique hotel group in Brooklyn expressed interest in partnering with us for a renovation project. The contract signing was scheduled in New York, at JFK. The symmetry was almost too precise. I flew alone in May 2030, carrying my own passport in a slim leather holder. I checked my ticket 3 times before boarding, not out of fear, but out of habit formed by experience. When I stepped into Terminal 4, the air smelled the same as it had 11 years earlier. Coffee, cleaners, motion. For a brief moment, memory pressed against me. The departure board, the closed gate, the silence where my family should have been. Then my phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Meeting with Brookfield Boutique Hospitality at 11:30. I walked forward. The contract negotiation lasted just under an hour. We reviewed square footage, timelines, payment schedules. When I signed my name, it felt grounded, not dramatic. It was simply the next logical step in a life built with intention. After the meeting, I stood near the large glass windows overlooking the runway. Planes taxied past, families gathered around charging stations. A mother adjusted her daughter's backpack strap. No one was looking at me. No one needed to. I called my grandmother first. "It is done," I said. "I knew it would be," she replied. My mother called later that evening. "I heard from your grandmother. You did it," she said. "Yes. I am proud of you, Eliza." The words landed differently now, not as an attempt to smooth over the past, just as acknowledgement. "Thank you," I said. Nathan sent a text the next day. He wrote 3 words. "I get it now." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm glad you do." Karma did not arrive as spectacle. It arrived as balance. Nathan lost a scholarship but found accountability. My mother lost a management title but gained clarity. I lost an illusion, but gained a foundation. The trust my father established in 2017 did more than hold money. It held structure. It held boundaries in place when emotions failed. Love does not mean blindness. It means design. Looking back, the most painful realization was not that my ticket had been canceled or my passport reported lost. It was that silence had been expected of me, that my role in the family was to absorb and adapt. Instead, I documented. Instead, I filed. Instead, I chose to believe that protecting myself was not betrayal. If you were 15 and standing at an empty gate while your family boarded without you, knowing your passport had been reported lost and your future quietly rearranged, would you have stayed silent to preserve the appearance of unity, or would you have trusted the paperwork and protected your own name?